Chapter 5. Meditation. Meditation is the hardest, easiest exercise I have found thus far. What I mean is, in order to meditate, the only requirement is you stop thinking. The problem with that is, it requires you to stop thinking. Not an easy task as far as most people are concerned, and I was no different. How is sitting down and turning myself off supposed to help? I'm going to attempt to describe things differently than you've heard them described before. Hopefully, by the end of this chapter, you'll have a better idea of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's happening when you get there. This is the process I use, and in no other way means you must do it in the same way. This is only a description of one way to do it. If you find a different way more effective, more power to you. Go forth and develop your craft. What is meditation? Meditation, as defined by Google. 1. The action or practice of meditating. A life of meditation. Synonyms: contemplation, thought, thinking, musing, pondering, consideration, reflection, deliberation, rumination, brooding, reverie, brown study, concentration. 2. A written or spoken discourse expressing considered thoughts on a subject. Plural noun: meditations. His later letters are intense meditations on man's exploitations of his fellows. There you have it. The definition is incredibly helpful. No wonder there's so much confusion on the subject. A little better description, in my opinion, would be to shut down your thinking so you can hear yourself speak. Sounds a little zen, but that's the idea, I think, to turn off everything you're imagining so you can perceive what's really there. I heard a description of the brain in reference to its environment that opened my eyes quite a bit. They were talking about the fact that brains never see the light of day. It's locked in a little black box inside your skull. It sees nothing, it hears nothing. All it does is interpret electrical signals it perceives in its environment. The eyes send electricity, as do the ears. Your brain receives signals when you've been touched softly on your skin, and another signal when your skin is cut by a knife. So, meditation isn't as much as turning off the brain, as it is refusing to use the receptors connected to the external environment. What's the point? It's difficult to understand what to do if you're not quite sure what you're trying to accomplish. In its very basic form, what you're trying to accomplish is alignment. What that means is literally a sense of peace. Typically, the thoughts that are flowing through our consciousness at any given moment are thoughts filled with worry about the future. We don't notice them because the thoughts are always there, running like a background program on your cell phone. If you can remove these thoughts by focusing on your breath, you will feel a sensation of relaxation set in. This is the best place to start if you're new to the idea of meditating. It's more difficult than it sounds to sit down and shut up, but once you get the hang of it, it's a great way to take the edge off if you're having some issues with overthinking. There's no time limit you should meet, or any certain time of day that is best. At this point in your exploration, your only goal should be to focus on shutting down your perception of a world outside of yourself. Your higher self. The concept of a person's higher self is another one of those confusing terms. Imagine that your consciousness, or soul, has spent many lifetimes as a human being on Earth. Hundreds of lifetimes of experience lie in what you currently consider to be your past. Hundreds of lifetimes of experience in your future, both on Earth and on far-off star systems in the universe. In the same way that I describe how now is the only thing that exists in Chapter 1, all of these lifetimes are happening here in the now, simultaneously, across an infinite number of dimensions. Picture it like an infinite stack of old movies. The film is completely unraveled and laying across the room in one single line. Each film being an adjacent reality, and they are stacked on top of each other in a tower as tall as you can perceive. Now reach up with your hand and smash the colossal tower straight downward into the thickness of a single layer. Then intertwine, invert, and spiral the stack outward in all directions. This is our universe. This is the nature of existence. What this means is that you exist in all these adjacent probabilities at the same time. Anything you've learned in any of these lifetimes is accessible to you in all of these lifetimes. You simply have to realize the illusion of separation and remove it. Harboring the idea that you are your body or you are a separate entity from the one next to you is installing a psychic filter in your consciousness. Everything in your experience is a direct mirror of your own perceptions. Everything you perceive is created by what you believe to be true. We are, as a species, living in a mathematical matrix of perception. Everything we see in front of us, we consider to be real and tangible, is only there because we have agreed as a collective that it's so. Unfortunately, this is the only vocabulary I have to describe the idea in a way that we can conceptualize, but that does not negate the implication of its meaning. To put it bluntly, if you are interested, you can train your intuition and your consciousness to merge. You can then let your life be guided by the intuition of your higher self. You can literally take your own advice from the future version of you if you understand how to interpret the information you're receiving. During a deep state of meditation, you can feel a change in the way your body feels. Some say it feels like levitating. Others feel like their skin's tingling and vibrating. What that is a literal change in your vibration. This is the point where you are now receiving thoughts. As long as you can hold this vibration, any thought you have will originate from your source energy, not from your outside environment. These are thoughts you receive, not thoughts you have. There's a huge difference. You are guessing when you have an idea of what to do. Your higher self, the future version of you, already knows what works and what doesn't. Source energy. Connecting your consciousness to source energy is a multi-step and multi-dimensional concept. As you may have guessed, the term source energy is referring to the source of all the energy in the universe. As I described in the Law of One, mentioned in Chapter 1, we are all one energy. Every tree, every flower, every animal and rock. We are the same energy vibrating at different frequencies. Everything in existence is endowed with consciousness and the ability to perceive its environment, even if you don't believe it to be so. Once you understand this in a way that you believe it, you will then have the ability to inhabit what is referred to as the Christ consciousness. When you are in touch and connected to all that is, you are then able to see through the eyes of Christ. This is the cosmic story found in the Bible and other religious texts. The resurrection of Christ never had anything to do with a man coming back to save the world. It was a prediction of a time when man realized himself as a divine creature with the power to create worlds. This was the story he told. This was his legacy. A legacy of a world free of fear and violence, a world free of famine and full of abundance. He tried to show the people that they had power to heal themselves, that they too have all the energy of the source by performing what people around him perceived to be miracles. He even tried to correct the mistakes made in the telling of his story, which was again misunderstood. Since that time, in what we perceive as our reality, religions of all faiths and creeds have been waiting for someone to save them. The most tragic thing about it is the true meaning of his message has been missing for so long. We're now close to a point of self-destruction as a species. This is the 5th time humans have reached this point on Earth, a point of realization and a decision for a particular trajectory of reality. When we choose a reality filled with fear and separation of self from other selves, we are assured to repeat mistakes made by past incarnations of our civilization, civilizations that have since been erased by time. The resurrection of Christ's consciousness, the embodiment of love in its true form, is said to bring in the kingdom of heaven. Tell me, if we lived in a world where what you thought about and focused on became real and tangible, and there was no fear of anything or anyone because people aren't afraid of someone killing them for their stuff, what would you call that? Sounds like heaven on earth, doesn't it? All of the parables of religion are stories of a cosmic drama that have been playing out in our system for billions of years. A story of creation and destruction. A story of perception and judgment. A story of a search outward affecting the search inward. Tuning your frequency. As I'm sure you can imagine, I had to do some pretty serious soul searching to come up with these conclusions. Once I started meditating, it took a couple months before I was even able to relax while I was relaxing. Once you become more familiar with your emotions and the physical sensation your body has when processing those emotions, you will be able to start asking questions and getting answers. You will be able to receive a thought and accurately interpret its intention. Meditation is a gradual process. When you first start, maybe you'll do it for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Once you start to see and feel what meditation is doing for your life, it won't be long until you're sitting as often as you can to download more information. The key is trusting your intuition. Knowing what you know is true will bring a confidence you never imagined. Here is a recap to make it simple. 1. Sit down in a comfortable position. 2. Focus on your breath as you breathe in and out. 3. Imagine the oxygen filling your lungs and spreading throughout your bloodstream. 4. When you notice you're thinking about something, Return to step 2 and repeat the process. 5. You will then feel your energy shift, your frequency change, or a sensation of tingling throughout your body. 6. Try to resist the urge to analyze the feeling and let it persist as long as possible. 1. This is where you're downloading information from your future self, source energy, or any other consciousness you're connected to. Depending on your focus, your intuition, or your level of consciousness, you will be receiving information from your support entities. 7. Let the info download in a form of vibration until you have an urge to complete the meditation. 8. Go on about your day, looking through magazines, watch a movie, do anything you want. Just go out and give yourself an opportunity to be presented with inspiration. 9. When you receive inspiration and you're aligned to it and don't ignore it, meaning you agree and enjoy the idea, you'll know what to do from there. Just do whatever you're inspired to do. It could be take out the trash, it might be go to the mall. You are now guiding yourself through your life. If you are intending to see the inspiration for movement, you will see it. This is the process I use to understand and communicate this information. What you're reading now is a product of simple meditation. I've been collecting data and storing variables in my head for so long, I was trying to sort through what seemed like an infinite amount of incredibly confusing information. One day I received an inspiration to make a simple list of what I thought was most important. An hour later, I was looking at the outline of this book. Shortly after that, the information was complete and all the ideas were perfectly described. I found it hard to believe until I experienced it for myself. I dare you to try it. What's the worst that can happen? You begin enjoying your life a little? Sounds like a decent trade-off to me. Akashic Records. Due to the nature of the universal oneness, everything that has ever happened seems to be happening at the same time. According to the religion we call modern science, time is only a figment of our perception. You can't be at a place without a time in the same way you can't be at a time without a place, which is where you get the word space-time. You can't have one without the other. In the same manner, you can't have matter without the consciousness to perceive it. The high priests of modern science tell us the stories of the Big Bang. It's easy to see how they came to this conclusion when you look at the math. You can easily demonstrate the expansion of energy with a couple equations and a few pictures of the stars. When you create a digital model of the observable universe, you can see it in visible form. Then you can rewind the tape, so to speak, to see how everything appears to originate from one infinitesimally small point containing all the matter in the universe. Then boom, the expansion begins. Unfortunately, this is an illusion. The universe in which our consciousness is part is a system of expansion which has no beginning and no end. What we see as other stars and galaxies is only a distortion of perception caused by what's referred to as the separation of self from other selves. The illusion of separation persists so deeply in our collective consciousness, it's caused us to perceive a system of labels. What we think of as a gray sweatshirt is seen by us all as a gray sweatshirt. The same thing goes for the table in your kitchen and what you perceive as your body. When we look into space with our modern telescopes, we find an infinite number of stars surrounded by an infinite number of planets, all combined in an infinite number of galaxies. Prior to that, we were only aware of the planets in our solar system, and prior to that, we were the only planet in our solar system. With each step, the tools we used to perceive the next discovery were an enhancement of the previous technology. The better the gear, the more we can see. There is a drawback to this though, which was pointed out by Erwin Schrodinger in 1935 with a thought experiment known as Schrodinger's cat. Here's an idea that's been misunderstood by nearly everyone that's ever heard it, the effect of which is still something we have to deal with on a daily basis. It clouds our judgment and has caused a shift of focus, so to speak, within our species. I'll give you a simple breakdown of the thought experiment. First, you would set up a device which would be hooked up to a timer which may or may not release the hammer attached to it. Then, place it in the box with the live cat and a small vial of hydrocyanic acid. When the timer goes off, if the hammer is released, it will knock over the vial of acid and kill the cat. If the hammer is not released, nothing happens and the cat remains alive. Schrodinger's theory was, until you actually look in the box to observe whether the cat is alive or dead, it actually exists in both states. The cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Until someone is there to perceive which state it's in, both a live cat and a dead cat are existing in the same space in the box, like a smeared photograph. I guess I can't say it was misunderstood. The observation was an exact representation of our reality. What was misunderstood, however, was the impact that this has on our lives. It shapes the very experience we have every day. It affects the collective consciousness of our species, our mental and physical health as individual human beings, and it shapes the entire illusion that we're entangled in. It is the foundation of all existence and the creation of all matter within our perception. In 1608, the telescope was invented by a man named Hans Lippershey. He called it a Dutch perceptive glass, which he used for seeing things far away as if they were nearby. An interesting choice of words to name your fancy new tool. In today's world, how different would we understand the vastness of space if Hans used his invention to instead make the tiny dots bigger? The telescope, being exactly the same in every way, the only difference is the idea motivating this interaction with what's being perceived. Would we understand the universe differently with such a small change in wording? Instead of launching rockets to a faraway destination like Mars or our moon, would we have instead a universe where our planet is surrounded by microscopic gods? Tiny dots of consciousness, viewable in greater detail if you make them larger. It may seem like a strange idea, but I promise you the probability of that universe is just as likely as the probability of the one we currently inhabit. Our perception is the creator of all that is. One day, a man had an idea that the stars were faraway balls of burning gas surrounded by planets. He created a tool that he believed with all of his consciousness would perform a certain task. When he used this tool to observe what he wanted to observe, his observations became a reality for him, and for him alone. When he told another person of his idea while presenting the information as he came to find it, the second person is now included in this new version of reality. The cycle continues into infinity, expanding outward in all directions, causing a simultaneous ripple in every dimension of existence. Once the idea is accepted by a critical mass or percentage of the species, it becomes a reality in which all parts of the species now inhabit. This phenomena is known to us already, but again, vastly misunderstood by our species as a whole. We lovingly refer to it as the 100th monkey effect. The 100th monkey states that once a certain proportion of a species learns a new skill or idea, the entire species suddenly has this new skill or knows the idea. What I'm suggesting is, the only reason we perceive the universe in the way we do as a species, being surrounded by incredibly distant stars and galaxies, is because Hans Lippershey used the invention he created to see things far away as if they were nearby, instead of making the tiny dots bigger. The collective consciousness of our species made a decision as to what surrounds us, and that decision forms the way we interact with those tiny dots. The act of looking outward and expecting to find something far away was the very act that created the matter we perceive. The simple fact that we keep looking for things smaller and smaller with a Large Hadron Collider means that we will always find a smaller piece of the whole. It will be there every time without fail. When we look further and further into space, whatever we expect to find will also be there. Once a decision has been made by our scientists to define the smallest length, is when you will finally have the smallest length. The entire universe is built on information. The thoughts you have and believe to generate in your own head are more oftentimes received from your environment like a radio antenna. Every thought you have is an entity of light, a packet of information transmitted into the atmosphere, causing a ripple through all of existence, affecting things and worlds in every dimension. The idea of quantum entanglement is so pervasive in our structure, there is no language that can accurately describe it. I had to give you the preceding information because without it, it's difficult to understand the idea of accessing the Akashic Records of our species. You can think of the Akash as a library of all experience in the universe. Every idea you have, will have, or have had in the past is stored here. Picture yourself walking into a library. As far as you can see in every direction are books, filled with the life experiences of every consciousness across the vastness of our universe. This library exists on a very real level. Each record in the library can be accessed at different frequencies of consciousness. By practicing meditation on a regular basis, you will learn how to access the Akash. There will be no reason at all to keep searching externally for any information you desire. The information already exists. You simply need to tune in to the proper channel to receive it.